This is the meeting for the committee meeting for the Neighborhood Preservation Committee, and it is concerning the transfer of funds to SORA for the housing strategy, right? Is that what we call it? What's it called? Housing strategy. Okay. All right. And with me, I have Councilor Hogan, Councilor Nave, Councilor Peniagua, Councilor Caldwell, and Councilor Monto.
Oh my God.
Look, I wanted to call her Williams, so okay. All right. And we have neighborhood business development with us, Michelle Skapansky. All right. Thank you. All right. So just to start out, this meeting is to identify certain projects or initiative, or to get an understanding of what the funds transfer will be allocated to, more or less, and answer other questions that the council may have.
Sure.
All right. So.
Good afternoon, councilors. Thank you for the opportunity to present on this item today. So, as you are all aware, in 2024, the council passed 3 pretty significant pieces of legislation as it pertains to housing. So the first one of those being the authorization which established the Syracuse Housing Strategies Corporation as a local development corporation. The establishment of the Syracuse Housing Strategy as the city's kind of overarching plan as it pertains to housing initiatives largely within the community, and framework for how we will work to address our market and affordability challenges within the city. And then the third of those items being an inclusion of an item in the fiscal year 24-25 budget for $2.5 million to go towards the housing strategy to facilitate the implementation of that strategy. So the items that we're looking to put before the council and kind of the topic of this meeting is specific to the mechanism by which we would be moving that $2.5 million that was included in the budget for the housing strategy. So specifically, that includes the authorization to adopt a second urban renewal plan. So it's an item from SURA, and then the other piece of that would be kind of the authorization to enter into a funding agreement with SURA for the $2.5 million.
What does it mean to adopt a second urban renewal plan?
So I'm going to talk about that a little bit. So as you are all aware, there's largely kind of under New York state law restrictions that are embedded within the state constitution that largely kind of prohibit the use of municipal funds on private residences. Understanding that the housing strategy is very prescriptive as it pertains to recommendations for direct financial assistance to homeowners to make improvements to properties. Us kind of entering into an agreement with SURA, adopting the second plan, gives us the ability by which we can legally use city municipal dollars on private residences. So there's exceptions kind of within the state law provisions that allow you to move forward with those activities if they're occurring under the umbrella of a established urban development plan. So I think kind of the process for updating the plan, it serves kind of 2 purposes. Number one, besides, as I mentioned, facilitating our ability to use the funds legally in a manner that's compliant with the state constitution, it also, I think, is just kind of a matter of good policy to make sure that SURA's plans that are in place are consistent with the broader vision of kind of city housing policy as a whole. The last time that any amendments were made to the SURA plan, it was when the land bank was created back in 2012. The boundaries of that of the SURA area were brought in to include a kind of further versions of the city, neighborhoods within the city that would allow us to have kind of more coverage as it pertains to areas where we were seeing the biggest concentrations of tax delinquent property.
Okay, that's why I asked the question, because when I look at the communities that the housing strategy will be working with and the current SORA neighborhood boundaries, they're a little bit out.
Yeah,
And so
correct.
how does that
So
work?
essentially, we have the ability to have concurrent urban development plans happening. So the map that I just passed out includes kind of the area that's in hatched lines, includes the boundaries of the current urban development area for Sura. And then what the second plan would be doing is it's mirroring in its entirety kind of the areas that were identified within the housing strategy that was authorized by the council, widens it out to be inclusive of all neighborhoods that were identified as either a distressed neighborhood or a middle neighborhood.
And what is the process of creating this new boundary lines? Does it have to go to the state for approval? Is that just
So
local?
essentially, it largely all happens kind of under local municipal control. So the process that we had to go through, we drafted the plan with council, put that forward to the Sura board, obviously, to approve first what that new boundary would look like. And then anytime that a municipality is looking to adopt a second or any additional urban development plan, it needs to go to the Planning Commission and as well as the council. And within kind of what the authorization is provided kind of under that circumstance, it's looking to affirm that the plan is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan. It's affirming that the council is on board with the seeker recommendation that was made, and also that it's appropriate for kind of the terms of what urban development plans can be established for. I think a really big thing to kind of emphasize and the relevancy of why we feel that this is an appropriate tool based on what was authorized by the council for the housing strategy as a whole is the language within the state statutes that allow us the ability to be doing work in areas not only which are currently blighted, but also in neighborhoods which are vulnerable to decline if further interventions are not taken.
Okay, so with this not being done already, would the transfer of funds be kind of a cart before the horse situation?
So it's they can happen as kind of a package deal. There's so that's really kind of why the two pieces of legislation would be coming before you. So,
Okay.
So, Commissioner, I mean, just for clarification, is this an additional, these areas are additional or they're expansion?
it would be additional. So we will have basically concurrent urban development plans in place. And by we, in this context, it would be under the bounds of Sura. It would have the existing plan, and nothing will change in terms of those areas. And then we will have the second plan that is in place that allows kind of the expanded geography. I would say the other kind of differences between the two plans is that consistent with kind of some of the stipulations that the Housing Strategies Corporation has in place with regards to kind of not purchasing its own property or owning its own property without going through several additional kind of approvals from the council before that could happen. It's a little bit more narrow in scope in that sense. It's really focused on provision of direct financial assistance to homeowners to rehabilitate and improve housing construction.
And laws looked at it, we're not violating any kind of state or.
Correct, and in fact, this
regulations.
is kind of leveraging Sura is the mechanism by which we really kind of need to go to ensure compliance with the applicable state laws.
See, I was under the impression it was going to be an expansion, not a addition. So we got two.
Yes, the idea is that we would have the two plans that run concurrently, and that's again all compliant under the existing state regulations.
So, Michelle, who's on the Sura board?
So the Sura board is comprised of the mayor, the commissioner of finance, and the common council president. In the absence of the common council president, corporation council has stated that the council pro tem can fill in as
So
they
it's
would
only
otherwise. Correct.
Three.
Correct.
Does everyone have a vote?
Yes.
So, couple quick questions. So, with the money being moved, so this is the money that's moving from special, this was ARPA moved from special objects, now to move to Sura. And with that movement of the money, what is that? It's 2.5, right?
This time, ARPA, these were funds that were voted and approved by the council that were general fund dollars.
So this is not that, this is the general fund money, the 2.5 from. Go ahead. Yeah, could you just?
The 2.5 has nothing to do with ARPA. It is in the general fund.
From 24, 25?
Correct.
Okay.
It was a budget allocation.
From
You're-
24,
You're probably getting mixed up with you
The
know.
other one, the second,
yeah.
right? So this is from last year's budget, right? Okay.
Current fiscal year that we are rounding out as of June 30.
And
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, no, ask that one.
what's the breakdown? I only know that there's up to 500 that'll be spent on positions.
Yeah, so we estimate from kind of an administrative standpoint that will be on a year-to-year basis somewhere between kind of 350,000 to 500,000 per year. 500,000 was what all the recommendations that we had received from CZB, kind of part of the planning of what their estimates were for what we would need kind of for staffing, just other administrative costs. 350,000 would be on the really low end, and that's based on what SEDCO is spending for just based on staff positions really is what that's localized to. I suspect we'll end up kind of somewhere in the middle. I would say right now, as far as kind of any committed fund sources that we have, the other funding that is committed for the organization is the $5 million from New York State. 0 of those dollars are able to be used for admin in any way. So that means that this $2.5 million under the terms of the funding agreement that if we were authorized to proceed kind of with the transfer to SURA would immediately enter into agreement with the Housing Strategies Corporation then to administer the funds on its behalf. Under the terms of that agreement, the $2.5 million could be used beyond just a calendar year period. So what that means is basically we might need to draw on personnel for more than 1 year.
So
out of that
technically, none of the 500 would be, at this point, you're not thinking of utilizing that in any other area, like none of that fund will go to any housing projects. This would be mainly a draw on administration. So did you,
So of the $2.5 million, I expect that all of our admin money is going to need to come from the $2.5 million
that's what I'm
because it
sorry.
is not able to
Yeah.
come from the state's portion.
okay,
Counselor,
I got
think
it
that-
mixed up, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think that we should set a percentage of administrative, and like we do with just about everything else, instead of having a range from 300,000 to 500,000. I think there should be a
I'm sort of confused anyhow because being very transparent, yes, we talked about the housing strategy, yes, we talked about, but I've been very transparent from the beginning, hiring people to do this process when we have entities in the program, as far as Housing Vision, Home Headquarters, Jubilee, and Land Bank. I don't understand why we would hire 2 to 3 people to do something that they would do. I don't know why we wouldn't just transfer the money over to them and allow them to do.
So taking a step back, just in terms of kind of the budget itself, obviously the Syracuse Housing Strategy Corporation has a board of directors, of which several of you are members of the board. So as far as kind of transparency into what budgeting and expenses is going to look like, those are all determinations that are going to be made by the board of directors. I think the idea with how all along, kind of the reasons that we arrived at the composition of the Housing Strategies Board that we did is inclusive of representation of both of those agencies so that we ensure that the activities and the work that is happening is not competing with the work that they are already doing. We know that we have any number of housing needs within this community. All of those organizations play a role in how we can kind of work and establish solutions to address those housing challenges.
So do we have the 5 million from ESD yet or not?
So ESD has authorized, it went through their board and they've approved it. There's a couple other administrative kind of steps that have to happen at the state level once the board approves it. So those are all in progress. We estimate that we'll have those funds in hand by about September is what they've communicated to us so far.
So ESD is not reimbursable? Because last time they said as we spend it, they would give it to us. It's not like,
They're going to disperse it in 3 tranches. So we get one disbursement of $2 million. Once those are fully expensed and we go through kind of the reporting process, then they will do another $2 million and then the final $1 million.
so back to the question. Spending $350,000 to hire someone or more to do something that there's people already doing it to create a board, it's just, to me, doesn't sound doesn't sound feasible. It doesn't make sense, especially with the likelihoods of the budget already that we're dealing with. I just am.
So again, I would say kind of understanding that those determinations are ultimately going to be made through the process of establishing the budget for the Housing Strategies Corporation. There's been no firm determinations about any staffing that's been made yet because we haven't been able to make them because we've been working through this process of trying to transfer the funds that were allocated for the organization. So there's time, I think, to work through that with the board, but it is obviously there's within kind of the staffing roles that we have currently within our office, while there is some level of I think capacity and kind of resources that we can dedicate within existing staff. Obviously, if we're going to get this going and do it correctly, like there's some level administration support that needs to be had for it.
I understand what Michelle's saying and everything, but one of the things that the councils need to recognize is that the agreement that you set forth here is what's gonna, the Housing Strategy Board is gonna be able to react off. So it is important that you all pay attention to the agreement that you set here with the council, because the council, it will not come back to council.
Well, all of us are not on the Housing Strategy Board, so the council is. So with that being said, I just want to make sure that, you know, I'm on a Housing Strategy Board. Councilor Rouser Jones is, and so is Hogan.
As is
and
the
so-
council president.
And council president is
So-
on there, but the rest of them is. So I'm just making it clear that I just don't understand. Even if it going to the House, I'm going to say the same thing when we meet with that. I just don't see where allocating that money over, if that's what that's for, the five. I don't see that being something that I would like to see going towards, when it could go towards fixing up or towards a housing instead of going to.
I'm certainly happy to have that conversation with the Housing Strategies Board in the process of establishing their budget.
So, Michelle, I have a quick question. So you mentioned that the 2.5 would, I mean, the administrative cost potentially, right, would be an approximate of 500,000 per year. Yeah. So that would be then allocated into a few years. So how many years?
I don't want to say definitively that that's going to have to be allocated into a few years. I think there's a multi-pronged strategy of fundraising that we want to get moving on for the Housing Strategies Corporation. So kind of not just looking at exclusively city funds, but also what does it look like to bring in kind of other funding sources. I think ideally we would look to find different ways where those dollars can come from. But in the absence of having any kind of assurances about what that looks like, we're kind of just basing some of those projections based on what we have exactly kind of before us today that is committed.
My question is that can roll over.
Yes, it can roll over,
with...
and so that would be kind of that would be the plan, is that if we needed to dip into that for admin costs for a couple years, we would look to do that, but otherwise we want to be using those dollars to put into kind of direct assistance for properties. So we also understand that just based on the needs that and the kind of tranches system that we're working with ESD, there's going to be times in which kind of we're going to need to use some of that $2.5 million also to be supporting kind of getting costs out the door for homeowner costs while we're waiting on reimbursements and things like that.
And I'm sure, do you have already an eligibility process to direct financial assistance to residents, or?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Like, how can people apply, or?
Yeah, I mean, how would you make them eligible to get the money?
Yeah, so I think the first areas where we're going to be focusing on are going to be homeowners that are within the Salt Springs and Tip Hill neighborhoods. So I think looking to kind of establish some initial waves of programming. I think the Housing Strategies Corporation Board at this point, before finalizing any terms for exactly what that first couple waves of programming is going to look like, we do need these dollars in place. Just understanding kind of the administrative components, even basic things such as purchasing directors and officers insurance for the board. That's
But will it be like income-based? I mean,
the idea is that there would not be any kind of income restrictions for these dollars.
Okay.
Understanding that we do have other funding sources in place through CDBG and things like that are kind of targeted for income restricted households. And again, kind of the idea with these funds, this is not meant to compete with any resources that are already going into neighborhoods for those purposes. It's meant to be additive.
So with the 2.5, I'm gonna I'm gonna be transparent with all my counselors. I'm not okay with it because it's not a plan. Like, I know we approved it, but when you request any money, it should be like, okay, I have 2.5 million. We plan on with the housing strategy, we need this money for X, Y, and Z. To ask the council for the 2.5 and say then housing strategy is going to they're gonna come up with what they're gonna do with it is still not giving the council I'm almost done, Michelle. An explanation of what the money is gonna be spent for. And I think that's important to know what the money is gonna be spent for, and is it going to be for employment? Like, is that a plan that you guys wanna do? Like, being open in front about it is important. Not to say, well, like the housing strategy, the council would like to know, like, what's the plan before we say, okay, yeah, take the 2.5. I know it has to be a plan.
As I stated, we expect that that's about the amount of money that we need. We expect that we need about 4 people to properly resource this.
So it's for 4 hires.
And so there's definitely 2 that's starting, 2 neighborhoods to start with. Okay,
Tip Hill and Salt Springs.
okay. And,
So if the legislation was crafted to say it was only for construction, housing, and not any kind of personnel, we could put that legislation together, correct? Where there's specifically no person, and we're not hiring anybody. Oh, the commissioners, maybe I should,
Hi,
commissioners.
Mike Kenizer, Commissioner of Finance. I think the 2.5 million is really seed funding to kind of kick off, the Housing Strategy Corporation. Similar to JSCB Phase 3, Council approved a $2 million ban, so that's short-term debt in January, because we know Phase 3 is a $400 million project. It's getting kicked off. We have, program manager expenses. We've had some legal fees to kick off JSCB Phase 3. So when we came here with this $2 million, it's not like, oh, we're paying $40,000 to bond attorney, we're paying $20,000. And I think with this ESD money, if it's reimbursement based, we need to be able to have funding to spend to get reimbursed. So I think the $300,000 and $400,000 as far as admin costs, similar to SURA, we have SURA employees that are employed in NBD that are actually getting funded by CDBG, Home, LED, ESG.
Commissioner, I was on JSEB 1.
Yeah.
And it was all city personnel that did all that work.
Yeah.
There was no, I don't think there was any
So we're not
kind of
getting,
money.
we're not
was-
getting salaries reimbursed from JSCB, but just as far as seed funding to kick off the, the program.
See, when I think seed funding, I think housing. I think that. I don't think paying for personnel to administer something that I think's, any kind of additional help from the city. I think the Housing Strategies Board should ask for help.
And
But
I think
I
they
don't think we
will.
should hire 4 new positions for it.
I mean, I think that this is kind of the scope of what that help is, right? Like the opportunity cost of kind of additional resources. Like right now, it kind of would create a situation where all of our additional staffing is coming from staff that are dedicated to doing other things. So,
Well, I mean, this is in the Marshall Plan. I mean, we're talking about $2.5 million here to administer the neighborhoods. And a lot of our city staff and home headquarters do that all the time. Maybe not to that, well, they
home
do it.
headquarters also has fees associated with administering any kind of programmatic expenses. So it's not like that they would be entering
Right.
into any agreement to do anything for us for free.
And we're not creating 4 legacy positions if home headquarters does it.
Understood. If the issue is that staffing and creating new positions is a challenge, again, happy to have those conversations and we can kind of figure out exactly what that looks like. But
The challenge, Michelle, is the sustainability of that. It's
Sure.
not creating the
Yes.
positions. Then how do we sustain it?
Yes.
Because the 2.5 go away, and then what?
yeah, understood. I mean, I think the kind of flip side of that coin is that our current situation as it pertains to the quality of our housing supply also isn't sustainable.
I want to go back, because when we started this conversation last year, we were considering this as an experimental. We wanted to see this project start. And I remember we had discussion if we had federal funds available. Well, we're not getting any more federal funds. And we had the plan to go where we are in another location. When I mentioned the north side, I was told, well, maybe down the road, maybe down the road. if it survives. So my question is, are we going to have the federal funding or some funding that we can say in 2 years from now, we can continue this, or are we going to stop it?
So I think as we had discussed, part of the reason and the necessity for a city allocation of funds is because state and federal funds are often income restricted in a way that do not allow us to fully kind of address the scope of needs that we have. We have a lot of households in middle neighborhoods that are making just enough to not qualify for a lot of those programs that are available through federal fund sources, but not enough to actually be able to kind of make the improvements that they need. So these are meant to be kind of additive resources that can help solve that problem.
So none of the other organizations have that kind of plan where they can spread out, where they can help homeowners throughout the whole city of Syracuse?
Correct.
None of them.
Not that they're doing right now at scale, no.
They can't. So like Councilor Penny Hargan said, it's not the fact that we are saying, oh, we don't want to hire. We're just saying how we're going to keep 4 new positions up and start, like we're inching, we're trying to figure it out instead of like make it happen. So it's going to take 4 positions, it's going to take another 6 months to a year before anything gets going, because it's going to be research when there's already organizations that are already doing it, that we can sort of get stuff moving. That was my only concern, because how are we going to sustain 4 positions?
If the legislation, if this item were to be put forward and there was authorization that there could not be any funds used for admin, that also precludes our ability to enter into any kind of agreement with any other organization to do any of that work.
I wasn't saying any money to admin, if it's like home
Yeah, we didn't
headquarters or
say
something
that.
like that. What we're talking about is creating 4 legacy
positions.
positions here in the city of Syracuse. You know, that's what we have to worry. I mean, if we have to, I understand money to, an entity that already does this all the time and can expand to do this. But I don't.
Yeah,
the
again,
4 legacy
as I
positions
mentioned
here.
before, if positions is the issue, then we can look to figure something out. But being able to access these funds for even basic administrative expenses, as I mentioned, directors and officers insurance, we can't enter into any kind of agreement with another organization to start doing any kind of programming for us unless we can have a basic backbone of some of that kind of infrastructure.
So is it lawyers? Are we going to need more lawyers? Because with any closing costs, I just think about every time I purchase the house, the paperwork that is involved in that. Like now, do we have to get another lawyer to help us with all the legal documents that we're doing when it comes to this?
I think from a capacity standpoint, again, it goes back to the idea that it deviates a lawyer, or in the case of kind of some of the fiscal processing, it deviates people from what they're already doing in resourcing for other aspects of their job. So if we don't necessarily have to create a full-time position, there could be mechanisms by which we would look to outsource those services as well. But that's not without a cost, right?
So we do need a lawyer for this process to help with the moving forward.
Minimally, there's going to be some basic level of legal fees that are associated with an administrative cost, yes.
So, Commissioner,
I'm not saying that we would hire a lawyer, though. I just want to make sure that that's clear,
Yeah,
that
but
there's basic levels of counsel, and that's a standard cost that is incurred by the city, both for outside counsel for all the city municipal corporations on a regular
why
basis.
do we have to move it to SURA at all?
I think Michelle alluded to it earlier. Really, I think there's some restrictions as far as, general fund dollars to private residences.
But this 2.5 is not going to residents.
It's going to SURA, which then SURA can administer the 2.5 million because, it is, I view it as kind of a pass-through, but SURA is allowed to spend money on private residences in a way that, with this new urban renewal plan, the city cannot.
The
2.5 is going to be for administrative costs, not directly to the residents. So do we need
I don't think, no.
I'm saying that a portion of the 2.5 needs to be used for some amount of administrative costs, but the SURA resolution explicitly states that it will enter into agreement with the Syracuse Housing Strategies Corporation to administer the funds on its behalf, and we want to be able to max out and use as much of that for residences as we possibly can.
Yeah, and Michelle's position, for example, as far as city funding that's paying for Michelle's mostly funded through the HUD entitlement grant. So a large percentage of Michelle's salary is paid by CDBG as an admin cost. In reality, if we had housing strategies, admin dollars, yeah, probably 5 to 10% of her salary should go to housing strategies because she's been putting so much time into that. You know, we're not doing that today because there's no housing strategy admin funding available. Whereas, you know, I think initially, yeah, you're not just going to hire 4 full-time people. Maybe it is this split of, okay, we have this person in Sura, they do 50% NBD work, they're doing 50% housing strategy work. So, you know, some of that admin housing strategy, we would allocate some of that person's, you know, Sura salary to the housing strategy because that's where the work is being performed.
And that's what I was trying to get to, like, what is the percentages and what to Clerk
I think
McBride
as this gets
stated,
up
like,
and
what's the
running-
percentages of every, like, what percentage will go to admin? What percentage is gonna go towards, new staff? What percentage is gonna go direct to housing? What percentage will go to, outside fees for the, so those are the breakdown things that we would probably wanna see. I don't know if that's something that everybody wants to see, or if that's specific to the board itself.
I guess the challenge that I have in terms of being able to bring that to the board, we can have a conversation with the Housing Strategies Corporation board about what is the best case scenario and what we would be asking for. But understanding that there's different parameters and provisions that it sounds like even in the conversation today that you all are thinking about as it pertains to limiting administrative costs, that makes it very difficult to have a conversation with the Housing Strategies Board about what that budget looks like. You know what I mean? Because like if we're planning for one thing and then it turns out that the stipulations that we have on it end up being completely different, we have to course correct, right? Like, we have to figure out a different kind of backup plan, so.
Right now, we don't have anything.
Well, I just would like to see like what the, I mean, I'm on the housing strategy board, so, you know, when you come up with a plan, like, okay, we need to give Michelle, you know, 10% more or 15% because she's working on it. We need to give, come on, 10 more. But we're gonna take this money and we're gonna use this for housing and we're gonna use this. Like, what is it gonna be used for? We really don't know, even if
Well,
we move
I
it
mean,
over.
this is just approving that $2.5 million funding, whereas I think as housing strategy gets off the ground a little bit more, like you will be required to pass an annual operating budget, which then that's where, okay, of this 2.5, this upcoming, you know, calendar fiscal year, we're expecting to spend $1 million of it. And of that million, we're expecting $100,000 on admin. So as far as that breakdown of what you're spending, I don't think this is the forum for that. And this is really just approving that 2.5 million. How that 2.5 million gets, you know, spent, I think is a meeting for another day, but I guess that's my opinion.
You don't think the council should
what-
oversee where the money's going, like where it's spending?
You're approving the funding, the 2.5 million today. As far as how the 2.5 million gets spent, I think that's more a housing strategy board approving the budget.
No.
Okay.
We need to know.
I strongly disagree because like, whatever agreement you all make here on this body, it's gonna stand. And that's what the housing strategy gonna have to respect. So that's why I say it is important for the council to come up with, talk with Michelle, talk with Michael if you want to, or whatever law.
Yeah, I think we should know, and everyone else should know what it is. It's not that we don't trust the housing strategy board, but it's like you're getting public dollars, like you said, it was in the budgets. Now, where is this money, once it goes there, what is the plan with it? Like, we still don't know a plan.
Sure, happy to have that conversation. There's a governance committee meeting scheduled for the Housing Strategies Corporation Board here in a couple weeks. We had a governance committee meeting a few weeks ago. I know several folks were not able to be at that, but those are the forums where those conversations are happening and being discussed. I think, again, though, as a,
So you know then what the money's gonna be spent for, since you said you had a
if
governance
we
meeting.
do not have dollars in the bank, it is difficult to make a firm budget of what spend down is going to look like.
But do we have a plan?
So, I think we're kind of saying two different things. I think part of the plan and what we're looking to get together is kind of dependent on going to be like the timing of when these dollars get issued, if we're able to have access to them, as I mentioned before. So
So if you got $2.5 million, Michelle, you don't have a plan of what y'all plan to do moving forward?
yeah, so I think the plan, and this would be kind of based on the us being able to get access to some of these funds here relatively quickly, we would be looking to try to open a first round of homeowner block challenge programming in the fall. I think that, again, timing is of the essence there because it's something that's very kind of weather-dependent exterior programming. The idea for that is to really kind of get some quick wins. It's really meant to be a lot more kind of sprucing up exterior conditions of properties, getting homeowners to be kind of working together. So it's teams of homeowners that are would be kind of working together to submit sort of joint applications for work that they each want to do on their individual properties. That's at least how the programming that has been talked about with the governance board so far. Again, we have not fully finalized exactly what those terms look like because absent kind of any dollars in place to be able to do basic administrative things, again, like I said, purchase insurance, just some of that kind of stuff, it's difficult to really fully finalize any of that. But the idea would be, all else being equal, that we would open up some of that initial block challenge money. The conversation that was most recently contemplated at the Housing Strategies Committee level was that those dollars, we would look to enter into agreement with home headquarters to administer some of those funds. Again, understanding time is of the essence here if we want to be able to get anything open by fall. And then again, we would be looking to open up kind of more robust, kind of larger home improvement programming around the first of the year.
Michelle, with all due respect, we are the stewards of the taxpayers' dollars, and we say we have to get this done. Well, we have questions, and as counselors, and it's in our authority as per the city charter, that we have to look at certain reports, certain documents. We have to do it.
Sure,
We are the
understood.
stewards, and you say, well, we want to get this done. We can't rush anything.
Understood, and
You know.
I would say that the under New York State law, the Housing Strategies Corporation, Board, SURA, are all under the same provisions in terms of budgeting transparency of open meetings. So I think that there is a lot of continuity there. Obviously, as we mentioned, there's several counselors that are involved in the all of these organizations.
So as far as transparency goes, when I was talking about 4 legacy, they're not really 4 legacy positions, or are they? They're what they are is just money that's going to be used for administrators who are already on the city payroll, right? Correct?
In my best case scenario, I would like to be able to hire at least 3 staff to be able to properly
okay.
resource and add the capacity to run the organization and to run programming in a manner that does not require kind of splitting off from other positions that are already existing. Again, that's a best case scenario, but this goes back to kind of the challenge of having a budget that is fully put before you without having the dollars in hand to be able to make some of those budgeting allocations.
I don't think it has to be in hand to come up to say, this is our proposed spending budget. Proposals change all the time.
Okay, yeah.
So that's just me.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. I think having a proposal of what you would like to spend it on, so then we can know moving forward what the budget looks like.
I mean, because currently, you
Yeah.
know, between 3.5 and 500 is going to be used towards staffing, per se. So you already know that part. So
Right, so, and again, kind of not to overcomplicate any of this, like, I expect that it would be, the 3, and just to be clear, 350 to 500,000 is staffing and all administration costs, we estimate. So legal fees, any fees that we have for kind of annual audit, stuff of that nature. The remaining, we would like to all be able to use that to direct assistance for homeowners. Again, in the absence of other kind of funding sources that are guaranteed from future funding years, or in the absence of any assurances about subsequent allocations from the city general fund to be able to continue using that portion of that staffing and admin, we may need to draw on a portion of the $2.5 million across multiple years. But otherwise, it would all go into direct assistance for homeowners.
So the Neighborhood Business Development Department doesn't have the capacity, basically, to administer this, help us administer this program. And without 3 new staffers.
And not operate at the scale that we are without taking resources from elsewhere. I think I would say within my team on neighborhood development, we have objectively or arguably probably the most stable set of staff that we've had, from just position continuity, and even with just kind of basic staffing absences. I had one person be out on parental leave, and so having to pick up kind of in the absence of being able to cover those duties and then also properly resource all of the other things that I'm responsible for in my day-to-day job, it very much underscored the extent to which we don't have a lot of extra margins that we can just pull from a staffing
Can I ask a
standpoint.
broader question? So if the $5 million from EST, do we have any idea what we do when that's gone? Because I think we could spend that in 5 seconds. So.
Again, I think kind of immediately the plan within the Housing Strategies Board, there's a multi-pronged set of fundraising strategy that needs to be put in place. So that is not reliant on strictly city funds. So, but I think that again, that comes from a combination of philanthropic sources. It comes from where could there be some other policies that might be adopted that could help contribute to some of that. Those all remain ongoing conversations that are in tandem. But again, this goes back to the idea of, as we had talked about quite a bit when the housing strategy was adopted, number one, there's a need for seed funding to get programming off the ground. And number two, the recommendation that was put forward within the strategy that was authorized by the council that the city look to contribute $2 million a year to be able to resource that. So
Counter to what Councilor Monto believes as far as the money flying out the door, not that it won't fly out the door, but I believe that it'll be slower process, and I agree with Councilor Hogan about the possibility of hiring up to 3 people, maybe not right away. My only thought is, are we finding the contractors for these jobs, or is the homeowner responsible for finding the contractors? Because contractors are far and few between. So I just want to know.
I think all the feedback that we've gotten from home headquarters and all of our partners that are doing this work is that having the homeowners take responsibility for finding contractors is the kind of best practice based on learned experience. We've certainly heard it loud and clear from residents as we've been out doing engagement that if we're prescriptive about the contractors that people are using, that's going to be a deal breaker for them in terms of wanting to use the funding. People want to,
And that's why I wanted to ask that question, because for me, I'm very entrenched in that arena. And so finding contractors are not an easy job. So I just personally believe that we could, have employees that, not to say they won't be doing much, I'm not saying that, but could be sitting around waiting for things to happen in these first ones, because contractors are not easy to find unless, we're starting to train some new people. But that could be a situation.
Yeah,
so I don't know if right out the door we're hiring 3 people, or if we're hiring 1 to start with, and then
I think it would definitely be the latter. And again, that's why when we're making some of these projections, the 350 to 500,000 is when we ramp up to full programming. And so again, that's why I say it's a little bit challenging for us to present kind of what do we think exactly a budget is going to look like, because I can give you kind of that projection of like, when we're up to full capacity, this is what we should be planning for. But you're exactly right. Like it's going to be a slower process. And I don't in any way mean to imply that we are immediately, as soon as funding is authorized, going to go put 5 or 4 job applications out the door, or postings. So we're taking all of that into account. And again, those conversations all are happening in conjunction with the Housing Strategies Board, which is well represented with counselors on that board. It's governance committee that's subject to all of the same public transparency, open meetings requirements that the council is. So.
Okay. Anybody have any other questions? Okay. All right. So I thank you, Michelle, for what you were able to give us today. We'll probably have some follow-up questions or concerns, but we have another meeting coming up, so we want to just end this meeting for now.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. So I'll call this meeting adjourned.
So
Motion to.
Second.